Well, it is the day after the day. The red tsunami began and the red tsunami ended in the state of Florida. Today, as many of you probably have seen in some of the punditries of Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, and the rest of the alphabet channels in the cable world, the political autopsies will begin. They're asking questions like, where did the right go wrong? Or where could we have done better? And depending on who you listen to, you'll get a completely different answer and a completely different way forward. The swampy Republicans are already wringing their hands. They're always doing that and talking about how we need to moderate on our position, especially on abortion, which several states in the Union had referendums for abortion, and I think all of them passed, including Prop 1 here in the not-so-golden state of California. Governor Hairgel won again against Brian Dahle, and it seems like the Democrats won up and down the ticket all across the state, I should say, except for various districts. We're going to be joined by one of the victors from the now 27th Congressional District here in Santa Clarita. Congressman Mike Garcia will be joining us here in about 5 or 6 minutes, and we'll be getting a little bit of information from him. They're still counting votes as we speak. And then at the bottom of the hour, or just after the bottom of the hour, we're going to get some more local stuff in regards to our school boards and the water district and things of that nature, as the Italian stallion himself, Joe Messina, will be calling in and giving us an update on his race, which, by the way, Joe was successful. And one of the things I want to say about Joe, and I'll say this to Joe when he comes on later, but Joe knows this about me. You know exactly where Joe Messina stands. And because you know where Joe Messina stands, you don't have to worry about anything because you know exactly where he stands. And so somebody jokingly said to Joe the other day, I don't know how you pull it off. You're a lightning rod, but you always pull it off. I think he pulls it off because he is a lightning rod. And nobody has to guess where Joe Messina stands. But yet, we've got a bunch of swampy Republicans who, again, are wringing their hands saying, here's the new way forward. Here's what we have to learn from yesterday's supposed red ripple. And, of course, they're going on and on about our abortion position. Now, I wanted to say something about that, considering that I'm in a state that had Proposition 1 on the ballot, and as of right now, it is winning 2-1. But if we as conservatives give up on standing and defending for life, then we might as well shed our, quote, conservative label. If we cannot, quote, conserve life in the womb and defend life in the womb, then we are no better than the other party. Furthermore, if we do backtrack on our position on life, then that would be a political calculation and not a principled one. So, a couple of things real quick. What are the quick takeaways from last night? What are the quick takeaways from last night? Let me give you a couple things, if I might. Number one, your desire to stem the leftist tide by way of voting is a worthy thing. Let me give you a scriptural verse. Proverbs chapter 28, verse 4 says this, they that forsake the law praise the wicked, but such as keep the law contend with them. That verse is basically saying those who basically forsake the law will always praise the wicked, but those of us who keep the law, we need to contend with those who are forsaking the law. That's one of the things we tried to do yesterday with our civic responsibility of voting. And let me also say this, it was a so-so night for the Republicans. In the end, it looks like we'll be in the majority in the House, be it a slim majority, and we have a chance of being in the majority in the Senate, depending on results from Nevada, which as of now look good for Adam Laxalt, and the inevitable runoff between Dr. Warnock, I like to say Warlock, and Herschel Walker in Georgia. So last night was not all doom and gloom. I don't want you guys to walk away and think, oh my gosh, everything's falling apart. Actually, things are falling into place. And let me also just throw this out, and this is like an obvious one. Sinners will do what sinners do. Sinners will double down on stupidity every time you give them a chance to do it. They did it here in California. They passed Prop 1 thanks to a crucial Republican vote that helped put this on the ballot. That person shall remain nameless at the moment. But we did have some real bright spots specifically here in California. And one of those bright spots was right here in the 27th Congressional District, where Mike Garcia won a decisive victory against his now third-time opponent, Christy Smith. And we have Congressman Garcia on the line, ready to say hello to the Politics and the Pulpit crew. Congressman Garcia, are you with us?
Hey, good afternoon, Pastor Cook. How you doing? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you well, sir. How are you today?
A little tired, a little exhausted, as you can imagine, but we're absolutely thrilled with the results so far. And, they're still counting, but the math problem is getting tougher for my opponent with every update. So we expect the race to tighten up a little bit as they finish the count. There's a lot of ballots still out there to be counted, so we're being respectful of the process. But we have declared victory, and we're looking forward to getting the majority here shortly in January. So it's overall, like you said, it was a disappointing evening relative to what some expectations were. But overall, the fact that we have the majority back and the fact that we will hopefully get the Senate majority back as well is a huge thing for the country.
Yeah, I'm trying not to be the doom and gloom guy, and I'm not trying to be the guy that just wants to be Mr. Positive for the sake of being positive. I actually think there were some good things from last night. Obviously, that district in New York where Sean Patrick Maloney, the DCCC guy, lost his seat to Lawler. I think that was a wonderful GOP pickup. And obviously, the fact that we have retired Nancy Pelosi is a good thing. But what were your thoughts last night as you were watching returns, not just for yourself, Congressman, but all across the nation? Obviously, we had a certain expectation built in last night, which, of course, about halfway through, we realized, this red tsunami looks more like a red ripple. What were your thoughts?
Well, the first thing that I really cued in on were the races where we had other veterans running. Something like 12 veterans were running as challengers in various states and prevailed. So these are folks who worked hard. These are folks that used the discipline from their experiences in the military to employ strategies and tactics to stay on message, to not get distracted by the noise around them. And they're now coming to Congress. And so, not a lot of people are talking about this. And we're at a record low percentage right now in the House for veterans, folks who have served. And so that's part of the problem. Part of the toxic partisan nature that we're experiencing in D.C. right now is because we're short on veterans serving in Congress, like we've seen in the 70s and 80s. So that's thing one. The other thing is I think a lot of folks sort of thought this was a foregone conclusion that they were going to run. When you have folks like Newt Gingrich on national TV and radio shows talking about picking up 40 to 70 seats, that changes the narrative and tenor of these discussions leading up to an election. And, these candidates are human beings. Some of them are not as disciplined as others. Some of them, I could see them taking their foot off the pedal and taking it for granted, not running as hard as they needed to, not nuancing the messaging specifically to their districts. And these folks lost. You got to pay attention to what's going on in your district. You got to win on your own merits and not rely on a red tide or a red wave in this case coming to fruition. So, but overall, look, we picked up, 14 seats in the last cycle in the House. We're going to pick up, hopefully double digits this cycle. We're going to get the majority back. So this isn't a bad news story. It's just we had very high expectations that weren't met. Yeah,
I think that's right, Congressman. And you were talking about discipline and being right on messaging and making sure that you get out your vote there in the community. One of the things I can say about you, Congressman, and I think some of the folks that hang around me would say the same thing, is you are disciplined, Congressman. You have a way of not making this district a national thing. You keep it pretty local. And a lot of times, some of these congresspeople can well, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and some of these
Yeah.
people, and it looks like Boebert is, barely going to squeak by if she does. But the fact
Right.
is these guys have kind of made their districts national districts, but you've kept it right here in the 27th congressional, and I think the average folk here appreciate that, and I think that's why they rewarded you so resoundingly this time. What say you?
Yeah, no, I agree, and I appreciate you recognizing that. As big of a profile that this campaign has, sometimes we never forget that it is a grassroots campaign. It is about the local issues, and I'm always in the district. So that's a huge part of the secret sauce, is making sure that you're present, making sure that you're never too big to go to meetings and participate in community events. And our volunteers on the campaign kept that flavor this cycle for sure. It's one of the reasons we are experiencing larger margin of victory. The other element of this is skill sets, right? I think conservatives value people that work hard. Conservatives value, in our case, legislators that actually legislate. They don't necessarily value and support the entertainers, the actresses, the actors, the social media warriors. They actually do expect us to do our jobs. And I think the far left appreciates the entertainment value of some of their candidates more, like AOC, than probably the conservatives do when they see it out of our behavior. So it's fun to be on social media, but in the end, that's not our job. Our job is to be in the district, to legislate, to take care of our constituents. And so it's not just behavior, it's also skill sets that come with this. And, in the end, you're a federal employee is in charge of making laws for the country, not tweets out on social media. So I think conservatives value the week.
If I might have you for the next few moments here, just put on your political punditry hat. What are your thoughts about Pennsylvania and the fact that if you just juxtapose the state of Florida with the state of Pennsylvania, it seems that Florida got much more red, and Pennsylvania in many ways got much more blue, at least in this cycle. Not only with governor, but of course now John Fetterman. What do you think happened there? Did Oz just not click? Was it the early vote that killed him? What do you think happened there if you just put on your little political prognostication hat?
Well, I think three things. One, there's migration patterns here that are affecting both of those states, right? People have left Pennsylvania for Florida. So within that, you've got Pennsylvania becoming more blue and Florida becoming more red. It's similar to what California has been experiencing with the exodus that we've seen. So that's thing one. Thing two, because of the early voting, yes, I think the Democrats tend to vote earlier, and most of them probably voted before the debate debacle by Fetterman, right?
Yeah.
So again, this is why early voting is risky sometimes. That
Sure.
They may have regretted that, but it was cast. And the last thing is, Obama and all the big guns for the Democrat Party showed up to Pennsylvania to lobby for Fetterman, and these people are still, icons within the progressive world and within the Democrat world, and that got the vote out. So Dr. Oz maybe wasn't the ideal candidate, but in the end, this giant machine showed up in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I technically wanted McCormick initially, but I ended up backing the candidate that ended up winning. But it is what it is, right, Congressman? But back to our district here, one of the things I said to my wife this morning as I got up and tried to recover and get off the dust from last night is I said, I'm just glad to be living in this particular district, considering we live in a state that is kind of, well, it's pretty blue. There's no doubt about it. But we happen to live in a district that has a little bit of sanity in it, and we're going to have Hart School President Joe Messina on a little bit later to talk about some of the local races, in particular, a lot of our Family First candidates who ran for school board that seem to have ran the tables, and I praise the Lord for that. But what do you think is going on? What are the dynamics in this district? Because obviously we had Simi Valley taken off the table, and earlier this year we were all fretting and wringing our hands, wondering what was going to happen with Congressman Garcia and what was going to happen in this district. But not only do you now have to worry about a 333 vote, positive, but it seems like things just moved in a different way for you this time. And is it that local touch? Is it the fact
Yeah.
that people just saw a record, or do you think it's a combination of all of that?
Well, I do think it's a combination. We have delivered on, and within my official office, we've helped over 3,000 constituents. We've led the largest drug bust with the LA County sheriffs up in the Antelope Valley. $2 billion worth of illegal marijuana seeds, and these are in people's backyards and their neighborhoods where these cartels were growing this stuff. Very dangerous environment. We eradicated that problem. We got 115 Americans out of Afghanistan, and part of it is I'm present, and we've been, effectively communicating to all demographics, the Black community, the Hispanic community. They're all Americans, and they just want to be a part of the process, and they want to be a part of the messaging. And we campaign year round. We don't wait till the last 6 weeks before the election to campaign. On the official side, we're present. We're helping people. And where I haven't won their hearts, I may have won their minds. And when people go to vote, they do vote with their heads in many cases. And a lot of Democrats voted for me this cycle, and they did last time too, because they value their own security over some blind allegiance to a political party.
Well,
I think that's extremely valuable.
I can very conclusively tell you that I met two individuals in Acton who were voting for Mike Garcia, who are Democrats. The first thing that was interesting is I found a Democrat in Acton. And then the second thing that I found interesting is they were willing to tell me. And they said, hey, listen, and these guys were in their mid-50s, probably early 60s, and they just simply said to me, I don't know what has happened to my party, specifically in this state. And just like I said Sunday, Mike, as I was preaching and you were so graciously listening, I said that people were going to vote for Mike Garcia because there are some Democrats out there that feel disaffected and disavowed by their current trajectory of their party. And they look at your record and say, I think that's a guy I can trust.
Yeah, that's right. This isn't the Kennedy party anymore, and I applaud folks who, and this is true of both parties. Everyone, even Republicans, should vote for the candidate that aligns their value, regardless of party affiliation. And in this case, the progressives have taken the Democrat Party, hijacked it, pulled it far left, and have alienated at least 10% of the voters in our district, and we're the benefactor of that. But like you said earlier, these progressives tend to double down on their behavior patterns rather than fixing and evolving themselves. And I was blessed with a good opponent. The bottom line is we out hustled everyone. We work hard. We don't take anything for granted. We're on message. We're on the right side of the policies. I work as hard as my team does. We're present, and I had a fantastic opponent for the third time. And when you add all those things up, you're able to win as a true conservative in a district that Biden won by 13%. And, it sounds magical, but people are real and they do care about the candidates and their own security.
Do you think the third time is a charm, Congressman? Do you think Christie has realized, I don't think I'm going to come back at this?
I don't know. I'm not going to speculate. It turns out I may be her biggest fan, but we'll see. We'll see what she does. I think hopefully if she's learned anything, it's that you've got to run better. You've got to be solution-based. You can't call veterans insurrectionists and traitors, and you can't march to defund the police. I mean, that just doesn't work in a city like Santa Clarita or even in the Antelope Valley. We value our security and our law enforcement. So hopefully she evolves. I don't mind if she runs again. That would be great too. But I applaud her for stepping in the ring. But obviously the people are looking for something different.
Yeah, two more things before we let you go, Congressman. What is your take on Kevin McCarthy? I know you're friends with Kevin, but now there's some rumblings about whether or not folks are going to back him in the House. What is your sense going forward?
Yeah, he's going to become the Speaker of the House. There's going to be, hopefully a spirited debate and competition. That's okay. And I think the party will mend after those discussions and come together as a group. We won't have a thick majority, so we're going to have to cooperate and fix some of these problems as one team moving forward, regardless of our differences within. And we can't do the circular firing squad. Look, McCarthy has done a good job in the last cycle. We gained 14 seats. In this cycle, we're going to gain hopefully double-digit seats. He's been leading that effort, campaigning. He spends 90% of his time on the road supporting candidates. And not every candidate is created equal, and I don't think every candidate hustles as much as they needed to in this case. And so We had high expectations. He was, trying to manage those expectations, but mainstream media got carried away, I think, and used that narrative against us. But I think Kevin's going to be the next Speaker of the House, and it's up to us as good conservatives to make sure that we adopt the right platform and we fix the problems that this country has right now in these next 2 years.
Well, lastly, I wanted to ask you this. I was listening to a little bit of Charlie Kirk this morning, and he had a couple of guys in with him, and they were talking about your race here in the 27th Congressional, and said, in many ways, Garcia's race needs to be a kind of a model. And so in many ways, some of these guys are looking at you and saying, what did you do right and what did the other guys do wrong? What would be your advice to those who have just won that you could give them going forward in order to be effective leaders in their prospective locations?
Take the jersey off. This isn't a game of jerseys. This isn't red versus blue, elephants versus donkeys, R's versus D's. This is the only jersey we should be wearing is the one that shows the Constitution and the American flag. We're all Americans. If you want to go out and flamethrow and use cookie cutter messaging, and you're in a solid, dark red district, that's fine. You probably will win. But the competitive district candidates, they need to evolve. They need to be able to speak to the middle third without sacrificing their principles and their values. They need to stay true to their conservative roots. And run harder than ever. But, you got to put the country first. You can't put any human being or any political party first. The voters will see through that. And, I'm in a district where there's only 29% Republicans. So if I go into every engagement, trying to convert people to Republicans, I'm not going to win. That's not my job. My job is to protect the country right now.
Targeted evangelism is what I like to say. Targeted evangelism.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, thankfully, you guys have won this district. Now you and your wife and kids can kind of relax, at least for a little bit, and until we come around to the next couple of years, and we'll see what happens. But thank you for calling in today, Congressman. We're glad for the victory, and we're glad that the margin is comfortable now, that we can all kind of breathe a sigh of relief, and we'll continue praying for you, and we're looking forward to hearing from you again very soon.
Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you, sir. You have a great day.
Bye-bye.
That was Congressman Mike Garcia from the 27th Congressional District. We are great and gracious to have him. We'll be back in just a minute here on KHTS, your hometown station, 98.1 FM and AM 1220. All right, welcome back to Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station, KHTS 98.1 FM and AM 1220. We just had a great interview with the elected official, Mike Garcia. This is his third time around. I still remember when I had the opportunity to meet him for the very first time in Eternal Valley back in 2019 when he was the featured speaker during the Memorial Day event there. That happens every year. And this was right when news broke that Katie Hill had her little, let's say, X-rated situation. And it wasn't long after that she had to resign, and Mike jumped in. And so not only did he end up vying against 16 or 17 other candidates for that runoff, but he came out on top and fulfilled the rest of Katie's tenure in Congress. And then, of course, Christy Smith came at him 3 different times. And so glad that Mike came out on top, rather victorious just yesterday. And, of course, the count still continues. There's other news out there. Many of us are wondering what's happening in the state of Arizona. That's one of the things that I think probably befuddles me the most is you have a candidate in one Kari Lake. Number one, she's a principled conservative. She was not always conservative, but obviously changed her mind politically, much like a lot of people have down through the years. Ronald Reagan, of course, was not a Republican his whole life. He was a Democrat until about 1964. We know Donald Trump himself was not a Republican all of his life. He changed probably towards the latter part of 2014, 2015. And there are several people who change their party positions and their principled positions. But Kari Lake is a force to be reckoned with. And just as Mike said that he's fortunate enough to run against someone like Christy Smith, Well, Kari Lake could not have run against a more incompetent candidate than Katie Hobbs. Katie Hobbs is a train wreck, yet she's up by almost 1 point after several more drops over the course of the night. We're going to get more of an update this afternoon, I think around 6 or 7 o'clock California time. But I would be very surprised, I mean very surprised, if Kari Lake does not pull this off. The other thing that I find interesting going into yesterday's election is, why do we have all the same election problems in the same Democratic districts? Yesterday, news came out that Maricopa County was having problems. Why is it always Maricopa County? They were the center of attention in 2020, and you know how that worked out. So here we have a district in Arizona, in probably one of the most hotly contested races for governor in the 50 states, and we have a completely incompetent boob on the Democratic side that doesn't want to debate Kari Lake, who is a racist, according to some of the people even on her side. And yet Kari Lake is this very eloquent individual who's able to masterfully work the camera, because she was in journalism for over 25 years. And she's down? Isn't that weird? All the polls had her head anywhere between 3 and 10. And yet she's down. Now, I still believe that Kari is going to pull this off, but I'm not too certain if Blake Masters is going to be able to pull it off. Blake Masters really needs to ride the coattails of Kari Lake. If Kari was up by 7 points right now, I think that would probably allow Blake to ride her coattails into victory, but I just don't think that is going to happen, unfortunately. Now, when it comes to the state of Nevada, we had problems yesterday as well. Not in the red part of Nevada. You've got 2 Democratic strongholds in the state of Nevada. Shoshone County up in the northern part of the state, where you have Reno, and then, of course, Clark County, which is the Dem stronghold, Las Vegas and all of that area, Henderson, Nevada. And they had some problems with some of their voting machines. Why does it always happen in their districts? Can you imagine if this were to happen in like a conservative stronghold like the state of Florida? The media would be going on and on and on and on about how people have been disenfranchised, how people were turned away. In fact, I even heard of some people in Maricopa County. Again, I'm just going with the news that I read. I'm not suggesting that this exactly happened, but some people were actually turned away from the polling place yesterday in Maricopa County. Now, again, the question is this. Had that happened in a red district, the news would have been all over that like flies on crap. But the fact is, it happened in a blue district, so therefore we're going to kind of hush-hush about that. And then you'll notice also the left is very good at what we call blaming you for what they do. They're very effective at that. And we heard this to the run-up to the midterm from Joe Biden. We heard this from all of his lackeys. We even heard Barack Obama say some of these things. And they project onto others what they themselves are guilty of. For instance, they talk about how we disenfranchise voters. You know what's so interesting? They were calling the Georgia election plan that Brian Kemp passed a year ago Jim Crow 2.0. Well, a record number of people voted in Georgia. I mean, a record number. And the left tried to spin that as well. They were saying something like, well, the reason why they came out to vote is just to stick a finger into the eye of the right, who tried to change their abilities to be able to vote earlier and things of that nature. That isn't the case. The reason why they were able to vote in mass the way they did is because there was no disenfranchisement. They had the absolute ability to vote. Nobody was standing in their way. Nobody was saying go home. There was a record number of votes cast in the state of Georgia. Now, one thing that I find rather odd is the splitting of the votes. Obviously, Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, won conclusively against Stacey Abrams. And ironically, Stacey Abrams conceded yesterday. She didn't concede 2018, but she definitely conceded yesterday. That was a rout. But yet, it seems like people who voted for Brian Kemp kind of left it blank for Herschel Walker. Now, again, I don't know why, because obviously Herschel would be a much better choice than Raphael Warnock. But yet, we're going to a runoff. So the first Tuesday, I believe, of December, we're gonna have to go through this all over again, and you know they are going to pull the stops out when it comes to this runoff. It is going to be absolute pandemonium, definitely on the left. So I would say those on the right better get their britches on, and they better get a good plan, because we've got to make sure that Herschel Walker gets over the finish line. He has got to take that football, and he has got to be able to spike it when he gets across. Did you see that? I just gave a sports analogy right there. It wasn't as great as some could, but I did. Now, when it comes to the race up in Pennsylvania, I am still at a loss for words as to why Fetterman won. The only thing I can think of is the early voting favored him immensely. And this is, I believe personally, that John Fetterman is the great acid test for why early voting is a bad thing. Here you have an individual who nobody had an opportunity to see debate with somebody else on stage until a week and a half before elections, and many people felt, especially those who had voted, oh, maybe I wasted my vote on John Fetterman. Well, they couldn't undo it. Some people have suggested to me that they could have, but I think it's actually a little more complicated, and I think that the laws are different in whatever state you happen to be in. But the fact is, I mean, the guy started out the debate with good night. That was his opening statement, good night. Now, again, I'm not trying to be mean for the sake of being mean. I mean, obviously the guy is getting over a stroke, but you're telling me that he's going to be able to function as a senator for the state of Pennsylvania in a meaningful way? I don't think so. I don't think his health is getting any better. And by the way, how come nobody mentions that big lump on his neck? I mean, it was pointed out in a town hall article a few weeks ago, and then as soon as it was pointed out in that article, I started looking at these Fetterman appearances, and I'm like, yeah, he's got it on the right side of his neck, and they're always covering it up with that big giant hoodie. I mean, the hoodie obviously makes him look like, a blue-collar guy, like, he's down with it and all, he's down with the struggle. But the fact is, they're covering up that whatever, that goiter that's on his neck. I have no idea what it is. How come nobody asks him a question about that? He's going to be the sitting senator of the state of Pennsylvania, and nobody asks him about the mass on his neck? Maybe that mass is, maybe it's just skin. I don't know. Maybe it's nothing. But why doesn't anybody have any intellectual curiosity about that? If that mass was on Trump's neck in 2017, there would be cryons running on CNN talking about the 25th Amendment and how we could get Trump out of the presidency because he had this mass on his neck. So again, there is no intellectual curiosity from the left at all. In just a few moments, we're supposed to have Joe Messina calling us in, and if he doesn't call in, I'm going to get really upset with him. But the fact is, he's going to be calling in and talking about the election here locally. Why? Because there were some really positive developments here in our district. And one of those developments happens to be the school board. And of course, Joe Messina is the president of the Hart School Board, and he won resoundingly yesterday against Rebecca Hinman. You'll remember last week we had Joe in, and Rebecca was urged to call, and Rebecca never called. But you know what happened? They called the election on her. Ha ha ha. So there you go. Joe says he's on hold. All right. I think we got Joe now. Joe Messina, are you there? Joe Messina's not there. Okay. Well, he's on hold. He'll be on in just a second here. But we had some great developments in our races here. Joe Messina, are you there?
I am. Are you there?
I am there. Well, first of all, congratulations on your race.
Thank you.
And I'm just wondering if Rebecca has more time now to come onto the show and talk about some of her issues.
Well, it now wouldn't be a separation of church and state issue, now would it?
It wasn't before, but it's definitely not now.
No,
So
I know.
Yeah.
I'm just amazed. But anyway,
absolutely. So obviously you won your race, and we're glad for that. But what's the status of the other family's first candidates that are down ticket from you? Jesus and Anna and some of the others. Where do they stand at the moment?
no. Based on the logic that we just talked about a minute ago, should Jesus even be allowed to run? I mean, anyway, we'll move on from there.
Depends on what kind of Jesus he is.
Yeah, right. So New Hall School Board. Brian Walters up against Donna Robert. Brian is the incumbent, and he is up almost 100 votes.
Sure.
And which is, again, with all due respect to Brian, it's problematic for an incumbent to be that close. So
no, I completely agree.
I don't know what message was being put out there for or against him. In Trustee Area 2, we had Rachel Haddock and Severna Mystery. Now, as you saw last night, we saw major sweeps.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll talk more about that in a second. But she is within striking distance. She's about 180 votes down from Rachel, Severna is, and I believe she still has a shot to take this.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Sinal, who we lovingly refer to as Jesus, he is 40 votes away from Cassandra Love. Now, again, interesting thing about this is an open seat. How is it that somebody who did absolutely no campaigning, no real mailers, no real outreach, get those kind of votes?
Tribalism.
It's beyond tribalism. Yes, you're correct.
They just vote because they think that person is going to reflect their political ideology. That's about it.
And one of the people that were very much a hard worker, Anna Grease, up against Laura Aerosmith, who by the way pulled out of the race by some mere coincidence exactly on the same day where she couldn't be removed from the ballot. So, but Anna is at 2,700 votes. Laura Aerosmith got 1,900. Somebody who's not even in the race anymore got 1,900 votes. So, I'm very, very happy for Anna.
Sure.
Trustee Area 5 was Trunky against Charlene Dusick. Charlene also within striking distance, about 40 votes away. And, this is one of those things where I said it about Brian as well. Trunky is an incumbent. Mm-hmm. Charlene is a challenger. For her to be 40 votes away from him is a concern. Should be a concern for him as to where people stand.
Sure.
And then in my race or my district, William S. Hart High School District, Bob Jensen just really overrunning Andrew Tabon as well as myself overrunning Rebecca Heineman. Mm-hmm. I've got 7,500 votes. She's got 4,500 votes. The Trustee Area 3, which is Sharice Moore, Dr. Moore, and Teresa Todd is an interesting one. Teresa got in the race late.
Yep.
So she had a lot of room to make up. Dr. Moore right now is at 3,900 votes. Teresa's at 2,700 votes. Now everybody's going, wow, that's a chasm. Well, it kind of is and it isn't. So early voting, mail-in voting, absentee ballots almost always go to the Democrats.
Yep.
They're always pretty much all over that. So
yep.
The first drop, as I told the team the other night, don't worry about it. First drop is going to look bad. Just bear with it. Republicans come out on voting day. So technically Monday and Tuesday were our days, if you would.
Sure.
And we saw massive sweeps last night in some of the voting from Monday being counted. I was ahead by 500 points. After the sweep, the first sweep, I was ahead by 2,500 votes.
Yeah.
So you can see how quickly that could change. Next update won't be done till this Friday. None of the votes on voting day, my understanding is, were counted yet. None of them.
Well, let me ask you a question, Joe, and not to suggest that you have to know all this information, but why in one of the greatest states in the union, at least in terms of geography, we have the Silicon Valley here in Northern California. We've got a bunch of techie people that live here. Why can't we count our votes?
You know what? I've been doing this. I've been, 5 cycles now, 6 cycles. There's no reason why we can't. Look, when we had paper ballots, they were pretty much in by midnight, 1 o'clock at the latest. We had the numbers by 1 o'clock the night of the election.
Yeah.
Now we have all this electronic tomfoolery, and we can't make it happen. We can't get a number for weeks. Now you can mail your ballot in on the day of the election, when it used to be we had to have it mailed in so it would arrive by the day of the election. So you're going to see numbers kind of jump around for the next week to 10 days.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I would love for California to be able to count their ballots in one night. I know it's a big state, but if Florida can do it, I guess we can. But, of course, there's great leadership in Florida as opposed to our Governor Hairgel here.
Yeah.
But anyway, Joe, I just want to say thank you for calling in today. And, again, congratulations on a resounding victory. And looking forward to more harassment and parent and teacher conferences and all the things that Joe is known for. And I just want to thank the Italian Stein for calling in today. And Joe, let's continue going forward.
Yep, I agree. God bless. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Joe. Take care. That was good to have Joe Messina back on today. And again, the count is not done for him. So in just a few moments, we'll round out the show. Again, you're listening to Politics in the Pulpit here with your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook, KHTS, FM 98.1 and AM 1220. And good afternoon. Welcome back to Politics in the Pulpit here with your irreverent Reverend Pastor Jerry Cook, KHTS, 98.1 FM and AM 1220. This is going to be a short segment here, but I just wanted to go over just a few things here for our local elections. In terms of Santa Clarita Council, Bill Miranda just popped into the first place here with 20.3% of the vote, and then we got Lorraine West and then Marcia McLean. Denise Light, who was my choice for the top 3, just finished outside of the top 3, but votes are still being counted. Who knows what is going to happen? So she's about 15.63% from Marcia McLean at the moment. There's only about 2 points separating them right now, so who knows what happens there. In terms of Garcia's race, which we just had Congressman Garcia on, he's at 57% of the vote to Christy Smith's 42. Again, as Mike suggested, that is going to tighten, but I don't think it's going to tighten very, very much. In the 40th Assembly District, Suzette Martinez Valadares is beating her opponent. Last night when I went to bed, she was down by about 6 or 7 points, but when I got up, surprisingly, she was ahead very decisively, now 54-46. And Tom Lackey up there in the Antelope Valley and so on, he's up pretty conclusively against that Smith guy. The one that really worries me, of course, is L.A. County Sheriff. We're always talking about our crime issues here in L.A., but now Robert Luna, who is basically, I'm going to call him Robert Lunatic. Robert Lunatic is going to be a rubber stamp for the city of Los Angeles. And Villanueva was some sort of conscience that unfortunately we're not going to have anymore unless these numbers change. Luna is at 56 and Villanueva is at 43. And so I don't know what's going to happen there, but let's pray and hope that sanity prevails. Again, don't give up on the state of California. The Golden State can remain gold as long as people stay here and fight the good fight. Again, it is good to have you with us today. I encourage you to be back next Wednesday at 2 o'clock for Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station, AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. Catch you next week.